Welcome again to another episode of the BBCE podcast. Hi, I'm Phil Endress alongside Billy and Tim from our retail store. Today we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of the BBCE retail store. So Billy, Tim, good to have you. Billy is the retail store manager here. He's the general manager. He's the head guy. If you need anything, you talk to him. And Tim, who's been here pretty much since the retail store opened.
Yep.
Yeah, man, glad you guys are here today.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about it.
Awesome. So tell me, when did this retail store open?
So we opened this location September 3rd of 23. So we're coming up on 3 years now that we'll be at this location. And then as you guys know, if you follow Baseball Card Exchange, and you guys have talked about many times, you know, we had the Schererville one down the street. We had the Lansing one. So this is the third retail store, I guess, for Baseball Card Exchange throughout the years?
Yeah.
Fourth. I think Steve
Maybe
had two
fourth.
in Lansing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, so the blueprint of this particular building, how big is it?
So the building itself is 5,000 square feet. As you can see behind me, we do have a partition wall. So we have our desk back there, shipping stuff that goes out of the retail store is done back there, storage in the back. So the storefront itself is about 3,800 square feet.
Okay, so 3,800 square feet of storefront and then 1,200 feet or so of, shipping, desk.
Yes.
Clutter.
Clutter.
Well, that means you have a good shop then.
Yes.
So let's talk about this for a moment. Over the years, the hobby has evolved. It evolved from the stuffy, small hobby shops of the late 70s and 80s, where, my God, sometimes when I was a kid, I'd walk into a card shop and it was like filled with haze and smoke.
Yep.
You remember going in those kind of shops? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could find some stuff in those shops. And, it'd be maybe 1,000 square foot shop at most. And they'd have all their tops cases stacked up in a corner, and they would have supplies stacked up in a corner and dust on everything. Let's talk for a little bit about how the hobby has changed and how retail stores have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, I think people think of, if you've been in the hobby for a long time, you think of those old, dark, kind of cramped up spaces. And I think that's one of the big things that Fanatics, when they took over and got into the industry, really started pushing was, a bigger retail store, somewhere where, we have the card bar up there where people can sit, open their boxes, and we have the dollar bins up front with chairs around it where you can sit and hang out, and, seating throughout where you can, just kind of hang out. When we do trade nights or kids clubs, we set up extra tables and have, 40 chairs or more in here. So I think hobby shops have kind of evolved from where you just went, you got your box, maybe you went home, maybe you stood at, one of the showcases for a minute to open it and talk. But, it's kind of turned more into a hangout spot. Kids will come in and go through the dollar boxes, or people up front talking. And a lot of times, it's not even that they have to buy something. They're just here to hang out, talk sports, talk cards. But it's definitely a change in even what me and Tim grew up with in terms of shops.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. So, okay, it's changed. So how has it changed? I mean, I know we have Pokemon now. I know we have other different non-sports that are very much mainstream now. How has the hobby shop changed, and what type of features does Baseball Card Exchange offer right now? You talked about the dollar box. You talked about the bar. You talked about these different things. Why don't you elaborate a little bit about it?
I think the one thing that our shop offers that not every other shop has, some you'll see it somewhere, is definitely the wax wall behind us that you see. We have stuff dating back to, some of it's early 90s. And then we also have, all of our wrap stuff up front, the 80s wax and all that. I don't think you see that in as many shops. I think a lot of shops are more what's just coming out. They sell through that, and then you replace it with what the next product is. But we do try to keep past years in stock. And that's always one thing that surprised me, is how often you'll say, we sold out a 2021 Series 2 hobby this weekend. Mm-hmm. Some guy came in and, I am putting that set together, and buys 2 boxes. But I think one of the things that we really try to do, and one of the reasons, we brought Tim on when we opened the shop and then, very quickly turned him into full-time, is the expansion into the TCG, realm and Pokemon. And, our last store we sold, what do we have there? A couple boxes, I think.
Yeah.
And that was one thing when we opened this store that we said we really should try to lean into it. And so Tim can talk a little more about the TCG and how we've expanded that part of it. But that's definitely something that hobby shops have evolved into, is that it's not just sports cards anymore.
Right.
There's a lot more.
So, Tim, you've been a collector of Pokemon for several years.
Oh yeah.
You know the ins and outs of it, and you're vital to the Pokemon TCG operation here. Let's talk about that for a minute here. We have a lot of clientele, and it's not just young people coming in to buy this.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What's the allure? What brings people in? Why do they like it?
I think it's just something different outside of just the typical sports cards. I mean, they also have other TCG, but I think Pokemon, since it came out in 99, that base set, I think everybody went nuts over, because it was something entirely new that they never seen before, and so it just kept growing, and then towards probably around like 2002, it kind of like slowly started going down a little bit, because it was more so the people who started collecting basically kind of got out around that time.
Sure.
So that stuff kind of, it wasn't printed as much, but then like probably around like, I'd say like 2010s-ish, it started kind of getting back up there. It wasn't as big as it is right now, but it was starting to kind of slowly climb. But I mean, it's just something fun, different than sports cards. I mean, people all ages come here and buy Pokemon, younger, older, people who just enjoyed collecting when they were a kid and just want the nostalgia portion of it again.
So, okay, they come here. Do they buy unopened? Do we sell singles? What all do we have?
So we sell singles, we sell unopened products, just a lot of we sell a lot of packs too, just of older stuff, newer stuff, whatever basically we end up having that we can kind of like put out for packs, or we just sell sell sealed.
So since this location opened, what would you estimate our sell increase in Pokemon TCG items?
Oh man.
I mean, 20-fold if you're talking
Yeah.
compared to the last shop. But, I think a big part of it is that we didn't have much of it. But I think it's more interesting. Me and Steve will, text each other every now and then and go, man, look at Pokemon sales this month compared to the same month a year ago. And, I mean, we're averaging 5 to 6x what we were doing in Pokemon a year ago to right now. So it's really expanded, and I think the one thing that I've noticed, too, is a lot of people who used to just buy sports are also now kind of dipping their toes into Pokemon.
Okay.
And I think it's a combination of the market's hot on it, so it's you get that FOMO, right? I want to get into something before it gets too crazy. But I also think a lot of it is still not too crazy priced, where I think a lot of the sports boxes, they go, I don't want to buy a $900 hobby box, but I'll buy, a $200 Pokemon box, and hopefully I can get some cards that, make it worth my while, or they open it with their kid and their kid's into it. So, and there's the nostalgia. I mean, I remember buying the Pokemon when it first came out when I was, just a kid. And so I think now with, being in that age range where you have, some exposable income, and, people get back into it and they kind of gravitate to what they remember from their younger years.
Sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking at the wall right now. Our video cameras are probably picking it up. You have box 279, 289, 289, 249, 239. And you don't really see that price point, or a lot of that price point today in sports. You see a lot more expensive. I mean, what are Bowman boxes when they come out?
I mean, Jumbo, I think, was over, right around $600 box this year.
Yeah.
So, the market on sports has just gone, it's gotten crazy in the last handful of years. And, there's a lot of factors, I think, into that, and, breaking and all those things that we'll talk about. But, I think you see a lot more people now that, will kind of get into some of the non-sport or the Pokemon, the TCG, and, they still have their fun with it, but it's at a price point that maybe they're more comfortable with.
Where does our wax wall start? And then how does it kind of
So I guess
go?
it's which way you look. You could either start it right here behind the register, which is going to be all BBCE wrap products. So right when you come in, you'll see the sign, our name, and when we designed the store, that was kind of me and Steve saying was like, what is Baseball Card Exchange known for, right? And that's our wrap. So the first thing we wanted people to see was that wrap product. And then we'll go into TCG here. We have a little bit of non-sport over there, Star Wars. But then we get into what? Hockey, football, basketball, baseball. Baseball is definitely our biggest section. That's always our biggest seller.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I've never counted them, but I'd guess probably a few hundred different products on the wall right now.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot. That's very impressive. And it probably is, I mean, maybe one of the biggest card shops in the United States. Or
there's some great shops out there now.
Yeah,
I think we compare with them, but
yeah.
I mean, some of the shops, social media, you see the people that are opening up, and I mean, it just gets
big,
more and more impressive. The ideas that people come up with, and not even so much the size of the store, because you can have a smaller storefront and have an incredible shop. But yeah, I mean, just some of the ideas people come up with. I mean, I'm constantly stealing ideas that I see on social media or saying that's a great idea. Let's incorporate it somehow. And
so yeah, let's talk about the experience. You come to Baseball Card Exchange. You've talked about what we have. We have the old, we have the new, we have, which by the way is important because a lot of times Baseball Card Exchange, they have the vintage, but we have it all here. We have the modern, we have the new stuff, we have the old stuff. But let's talk about what we do offer as well. You talked about like break nights or trade nights rather.
Yep.
Talk about some of those extracurriculars that we have here.
So we do trade nights, which we do just our own trade, BBCE trade nights. We do those a few times a year. Trying to get into doing them more often. Just time gets away from you, and you think you have more time to schedule stuff. But we do run a kids club. So our kids club is a $30 yearly membership. They get either, what was it, Tim, this year? 4 packs of
Scarlet and Violet,
or a blaster box of 2025 Series 1.
Okay.
So you kind of get your membership paid off just in product when you sign up. And then we do 4 events throughout the year. We do giveaways, pizza, raffles, and it's just kind of events for just our young collectors to have a trade night just to themselves where they can, maybe meet some friends or hang out with their friends. So we do that. We do the trade nights. We do, we're direct with Topps. We're a Topps hobby shop. So we do the rip nights that they do. I think our last one we had, it was over 200 people that,
that
showed up for it.
Amazing.
Yeah, so we do those. So we try to get, like I talked about earlier, that community feel to it where you're bringing collectors in and, try to do something for every interest, something Pokemon related, something sports related. So
earlier you alluded to the fact that sort of Fanatics has changed the game of hobby shops. Can you sort of expound on that a bit?
Yeah.
How so?
I think they'd put a lot more emphasis onto the appearance of your store. I think kind of like you talked about earlier, I think you need that healthy, I know there's some shops that they have that boutique feel to it. And I wouldn't describe our shop as that boutique feel where you just have, one box of each thing, placed, measured out and everything. But I think they kind of wanted people to move away from that cramped feel where maybe it was a shop more so that there was no place to hang out. There was no place for people to host trade nights, to host events. And, I think that's where a lot of the younger people nowadays that are getting into the hobby, I mean, you see the trade nights at shows and the National. It's almost like sometimes the trade nights draw a bigger crowd than the show itself does nowadays. So I think they put an emphasis on incorporating that into hobby shops. How can you have that card show trade night feel, but in a local hobby shop? But I think it's important to have, I'm always amazed at how many people sit at the dollar bins and pick through, looking for dollar cards or players they collect, or, even people that sell on Whatnot or other places that go through looking for, that dollar card that they know they can get $3, $4, $5 for. So I think you need that healthy mix of the old mixed with the new, in terms of the vibe of your hobby shop. But we try to keep it, as clean as we can up front and, present everything well. And, I think that's big to customers. If you don't present your stuff like it's, worth it, why would you want to spend money on something that the shop itself isn't deeming worth it?
So let's talk about vintage collectors. What can a vintage collector get their hands on if they walk into the Baseball Card Exchange retail store?
If you're a vintage collector, you'll be happy because that is the one part that was, I think, curated by Steve Hart himself at this store. So we have, what is it, 5, 6 showcases probably 6 or 7 showcases over there that are, we have some partial vintage sets, dating back to, I think there's some 50s, 60s, 70s. We have a few showcases of graded cards and then 2 showcases of raw baseball, a showcase of football, a showcase of basketball, and all that's going to be pretty much that most of it's going to be pre-1980. Obviously some of the football and basketball, you dip into that like 80 to 86 range, but it's all Hall of Fame rookies and graded cards and stuff like that. But that's one part of the shop that Steve is always, real big on making sure is stocked and new and that type of stuff.
What about commons? You have any commons?
We do. So we keep, that's the one thing I would say I don't see in many other shops is that we have a whole warehouse shelving back there with just probably 50 or 60 5-row boxes full of commons dating back to 1953 Topps baseball all the way through 75 Topps is probably where commons stop. And then after 75, we still have boxes full of Hall of Famers.
You said 50 to 60 boxes?
There's probably about 50 to 65 rows back there. There is a lot of commons back there. And we still have people all the time that come in and sit at the card bar and say, can you bring out the 62 Topps? And they just sit there with their list and, piece together their vintage sets. It's awesome to watch.
Yeah, there's not many card shops that offer that. That's for sure.
Yep.
So vintage collectors can come in and expect to find all of that. All right, what about guys that aren't so much into vintage? They come in and, maybe they collect 80s, 90s, 2000s, early 2000s. What can they expect to find?
Those type of ranges, I would say definitely you're looking more through, some of the $5 and up top-loaded boxes behind the card bar. You're looking in the showcases. We always have a lot of stuff that Jacob is pricing in the back that if you can give us, I'm looking for specific teams, players, that kind of stuff, we can pull some items for you. And then in terms of, the ultra-modern, all of that's going to be in showcases, the value bins up front, the $5 and up boxes behind the bar. So there's plenty of boxes for everybody to have something to go through here.
And I dare say our 80s, 90s, early 2000s selection of unopens pretty decent?
Yes, very much so. And you can definitely, the one thing I always tell people is utilize the website on that as well. bbcexchange.com. There's always the local pickup option. If you want to come check out the shop, especially coming through for the National, see some items on the website, pick them up here, and then you can check the shop out while you pick up your items.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So modern collectors, they're coming in here. They're coming in strong. Obviously, modern. I'm the buyer of Baseball Card Exchange, but I don't buy a ton of modern stuff. So people that come in and they collect modern cards, what can they expect to find here?
Modern is definitely what, kind of, I would say, dominates the showcases for sure. But that's what you get most of your collectors coming through for right now. Mm-hmm. We definitely have our vintage on the, the other side of the store, but the modern is what I would say we rotate the most. So we're always buying modern in shop. It's, as you know from shows, modern is competitive nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
It is very competitive with what, pricing is. Comps are constantly changing. So we try to keep stuff, we kind of have a mindset of, what is the average collector who comes in the shop looking to buy? Mm-hmm. So it's awesome to have, your one showcase up here of cards that are, maybe $1,000 or more. But for the most part, you have people that are coming in, they're looking for a player that they like, an autograph. And, it's really that like $150 under price range that we really try to focus on for the retail storefront, just because that's what moves. So, we feel like it makes it easier. People come in, they want to maybe trade some of the stuff that they have into some new stuff that they like. And then we always have our eBay inventory as well, which is where we put a lot of the, higher end modern. And so that's always in-house here as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, well, that's about it for now with our retail store. If you have never been to the Baseball Card Exchange retail store, we're here at 709B US Highway 41 in Schererville. All of the links will be below the video. Come in, check us out. I mean, there is a lot to see. If you're in driving distance, 2, 3, 4 hours, it's worth a trip. There's great restaurants around here. We're only about 30 miles south of Chicago. Come check out a Cubs game. Come check out a Sox game. You definitely can find tickets to a Sox game this year.
Yes, quite easily. Yeah.
But yeah, come check us out. We'd love to see you. And as always, we're always buying. So if there's anything that you have for sale, no appointment is needed. However, if you do have sort of a big collection, you can call the retail store and set up a time where you can come in and have them take a look at it. Come in, check us out. Anything you'd like to say on the way out, Billy?
Yeah, we hope to see everybody here. We're going to the National, especially this year. That's usually the time that a lot of people come in and check the shop out. So we're open 7 days a week, 10 to 7 Monday through Friday, 10 to 5 on Saturday, Sundays. And there's always somebody here who's looking to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, hey, this is Phil Endress alongside Billy and Tim. Another episode of the BBCE podcast. We hope to see you here at the BBCE Retail store. Until next time.